since the turn of the millennium, since the early 2000s, really, there has been one kind of crisis after another. And I think it all started with 9/11, which already triggered a series of wars being fought, but also a lot of polarization dynamics in the US, but also in Europe, which have really fed into different forms of extremism. And the jihadist attacks that then came in recent years, the whole waves of attacks across Paris, London, but also Berlin and other major cities, really then created a backlash from the far right and kind of divided our communities. So I think that really sparked a lot of anger and led to, what I would say is an age of rage.
The West is at war with Islam and Muslims are at war with the West, are two very complementing rhetorics used by both Islamist extremists and far-right groups across the world. The political discourse in Europe and the US has been characterised by a wave of talks on how better to tackle religious and political extremism. Although Europe experienced a 75% decrease in Islamist-related killings in 2017, an unprecedented rise in far-right attacks against Muslims and other minority groups hit it. 22 attacks by far-right groups and individuals took place in 2017 across Western Europe, and the UK alone suffered 66 deaths. More recently, Christchurch in New Zealand saw 50 gunned down at 2 mosques during Friday prayers. The attacker said he was influenced by the Finsbury Park attack on Muslim worshippers in London, which happened in 2017 during Ramadan. It seems to be indeed the age of rage.
One of the biggest problems right now is that we're having really a lot of extremists, but also just malicious actors especially on the internet, who are able to spread their narratives without them being questioned by the digital natives, but also by the older populations. I think really focusing on digital literacy and media competence will be the next big challenge for the next few decades, really.
The attacker of the Christchurch attack had indeed published a manifesto detailing anti-immigration neo-fascist ideology. The attack itself was live-streamed by him on Facebook and viewed 4,000 times before it was taken down. Radicalisation is a multi-layered process. Experts say it cannot be pinned down to one factor, making community support necessary to be able to detect and prevent it. Nigel Bromage was a far-right activist for almost 20 years. He's now managing director of Small Steps, which raises awareness of far-right extremism and provides training for local frontline professionals and parents to be able to intervene in cases of vulnerability to extremist ideology.
We've got parents now who have got loved ones who are involved in the far right, so they may be involved in National Action, or they may be involved in the British Movement, National Front, and what is they feel like they're actually bad parents. In our opinion, they are not bad parents. Some people are, sort of voices for individuals who are just angry and are not happy with the system or, individual issues. But what happens is sometimes with those frustrations, extremists will build on those, and then what they'll do then is say, actually, you're not achieving it through petitions or marches, come with us, we're going to commit direct action, because then at least somebody will listen.
De-radicalisation workshops on Islamist extremism have also been running across the UK.
Today, almost 2 years on from the attack, the Muslim Welfare House, just a few yards away from Finsbury Park Mosque, is running a workshop on how to de-radicalise an extremist.
Fidel Soliman is director of Bridges Foundation, an international organisation specialising in introducing Islam to Muslims and non-Muslims. It has origins in Egypt, but its work started in the United States directly after 9/11. The workshop is not meant to be in response to the Finsbury Mosque attack. Indeed, most of it was on the misinformation spread by Islamist extremism. Education in different forms was the suggested solution.
The problem is with ignorance. And ignorance in itself is not a problem, because actually being ignorant is not an insult. When I tell someone you're ignorant, you shouldn't feel insulted. When people think that ignorance is lack of intelligence, not lack of information, so they don't want to learn. So you go to non-Muslims and tell them you need to learn the truth about Islam, and they don't want to learn. Because are you calling me ignorant? Yes, of course, you can be ignorant, no problem with that. Same thing also with Muslims, when you tell them you need to know the truth about jihad, for example, and they don't want to know because thinking that they are not ignorant. Well, the first step is to admit that you are ignorant and that you need information.
Dan Quinn is a local resident, but he's also a police constable for London's borough of Islington and Camden. He came to the workshop and spoke about how important it is for people to join such events organised by the community.
If you have a conversation with people, you have an element of understanding. And if you have the understanding, you can find the common ground and actually find that you've got a lot more in common with each other. And that it's a lot easier to deal with a conflict if you speak about it first, as opposed to going straight in and having that conflict.
By raping women or by killing civilians will be hunted on the day of judgment by the verses of Allah, by the Quran.
You also said that de-radicalising is competing against the recruiters, and we know they have very sophisticated methods. They have high production value in their videos. Tell me what you meant by the competition between the two, and how do you tackle that particular issue?
Well, there are people who are recruiting for ISIS, for example, and I need to know how they recruit in order to nullify their means. But the problem is when some governments do exactly the opposite. So, for example, they tell them, Sayyid Qutb and Ibn Taymiyyah, those are two very famous scholars, support our ideology. And then you find governments banning their books. Like that, you confirmed for the young people that they are really supported by the ideology of those two scholars. You should take the ideology of those two scholars and prove from them that those terrorists are not supported by that. So the problem is when people don't know how exactly to deal, and then they are making the things worse.
One of the arguments a young lad spoke to me, and it was a genuine comment off a young lad who was 16 at school, and he said, "Oh, I hate all them immigrants, you know, they come over here, they take all our jobs, they're all on benefits." And then you actually just go, you know, just think about what you've just said there. And the young lad says, "What do you mean?" And I says, "Well, they can't be doing both. They're either having all your jobs or they're all on benefits." And then the young lad, bless him, got really frustrated and angry. He went away, come back with another one line, and then it was another one liner about paedophiles. And I said, well, actually, not all Muslims are paedophiles. If you look at the facts and figures, there's more white paedophiles than there are Muslims. And then he went away again. But each time he came back, we gave him a simple answer which actually he could understand, and went away and gave him some links.
Nigel Enfidel's works are proof that a community can rebuild and become stronger with the right intervention, education, guidance, and by embracing its differences. But is this enough? Many right and far-right politicians across the world have spoken against migrants and their supposed dangerous beliefs and acts. After New Zealand's mosque attacks, Australia's far-right politician Fraser Anning blamed the attacks on Muslim immigration despite condemning the attacks, causing fury in the Australian Parliament and leading many to accuse him of fueling the far-right ideology.
It's important to distinguish in terms of the tactics that non-violent and violent extremist movements use. They are different, of course, but in terms of the narratives that they propagate, in terms of the ideologies, they're often very similar, if not identical. So whether we talk about Hizb ut-Tahrir or about ISIS in terms of what their end goal is, what kind of ideologies they propagate, it's very, very similar. And it's the same for the far right, whether we talk about non-violent far right movements or about the ones that are really staging terrorist attacks. They're spreading very similar ideas about what an ideal world, what their utopian version of the world would look like.